Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the show. Do you find yourself more distracted than ever? You're not alone. In today's rapid-fire, hyper-connected, dopamine-driven modern world, harnessing true focus is a rare superpower. But understanding the subtle mechanics of human attention might just be the most valuable skill set in our increasingly distracted world. Today we're exploring the extraordinary work of Will Henshall, a guy who doesn't just create music, but deconstructs how sound interacts with our neurological operating system. Will is a musician, inventor, and entrepreneur who went from writing global #1 hit songs to reverse engineering human focus like it's a complex guitar solo. So what happens when a rock star decides that brain science is more interesting than guitar riffs? How does a musician become the inventor who helps millions of people concentrate? And what secret sauce turns creative chaos into entrepreneurial magic? Like many of us, Will describes himself as unemployable. But to Will, that can actually be an advantage. Being unemployable means seeing opportunities where others see obstacles, whether in music, technology, or business. Successful entrepreneurs don't get everything right, but they're relentless. They keep adapting and moving forward. It's not about talent, it's about seeing the world from a unique and different perspective and having the guts to build something when everyone else says that it can't be done. Before we get to the interview, please take a quick moment to make sure that you're subscribed to this show wherever you listen to your podcasts. And for bonus points, please leave a review for The Abel James Show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. To stay up to date and get behind the scenes goodies, make sure to sign up for my newsletter at abeljames.com. That's ABELJames.com. And I'm publishing a lot of exclusive ad-free content on my new Substack channel. Make sure to check that out at abeljames.substack.com. See you there. All right, in this conversation with Will, you're about to discover why different brain types require unique sonic approaches to maintain concentration, especially if you have ADHD, how to choose music to aid focus, flow, and productivity based on your brain type, why AI and generative art can't replace the emotional power of live human creativity and performance, and much more. Let's go hang out with Will. Welcome back, folks. Will Henshall is a startup entrepreneur, inventor, songwriter, composer, and CEO of Metal.men. Will founded the UK band London Beat in the early 90s and wrote the global #1 hit song, I've Been Thinking About You. In 2010, he started up Focus at Will, music streaming for work, which now has 2 million users. Thanks so much for joining us today, Will.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. I didn't write Thinking About You on my own. I co-wrote it. I was the main writer, but I co-wrote it with the 3 amazing vocalists that were in the band with me. And London Beat was an interesting project. It was me in the studio playing the instruments, tracking everything up. And then these 3 super renowned soul vocalists who became obviously members of the band. Working with them, I learned a lot about life, love, a lot of things. They were nearly 20 years older than me at the time. So
incredible.
Yeah.
So for you, Will, was entrepreneurship first, or was it music that really drove you into that world?
That is a really perfect question. I'll tell you why. To be a successful artist, and London Beat, we had half a dozen really big hits. I've Been Thinking About You is the one that everybody knows. It's still one of the most played songs from the 90s on the radio globally. I was the BMI PRS Writer of the Year in 92. It was a fantastic time. To be a successful artist, you have to be an entrepreneur. You know that. If you're a photographer, you got to be an entrepreneur. If you're a fine artist, you got to be an entrepreneur. And another sort of section of my life professionally has been inventing stuff, as you said earlier. Yeah. And so as an inventor, I come from a long line of British inventors on my dad's side, also my mom's side, inventing, industrial things and, things that help people with handicaps, a ton of different things. Guess what? You got to be an entrepreneur. So to be a successful inventor and to be a successful artist, you gotta figure out how to sell the damn widgets.
Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of built into me, as you said. I've lived in the US now for over 40 years, but I was born in the UK, never managed to lose the accent, and so come from a tradition of never go out and get a job, but always go and make a job, right? You know, I think that's really what entrepreneurs mean. It means that you find it difficult to fit. You're a square peg in a round hole. You find it difficult to work for someone else because you're like, really? Is this the best way of doing this?
Yeah. Well, I've heard you say
Right.
that you're unemployable, which is kind of how that
I'm,
works, right?
I'm largely unemployable, like a lot of the metal guys are, yeah, in the traditional sense. What all that means is that we are entrepreneurial. And if we have a position, now talking about the metal men, we'll talk about this more in a minute, I know, but if a typical metal guy works in an organization or for a Fortune, 500 company, his outlook is going to be extremely entrepreneurial.
Mhm.
He's thinking about, is this the right product? Is this the right market fit? Is this the best way of doing this? Our P&L could be improved by doing these things. And so we're always thinking from that perspective as opposed to clocking in and clocking out. Right.
And I wonder too about the relationship between learning something like music, especially when you're younger, and just putting so many hours and so much effort, so much, just time in a chair and with your passion. Uh, how that translates to later in life, being able to focus that energy toward building something that's bigger than yourself in the form of a company. Uh, I feel like there is some sort of that does translate if you let it. It doesn't happen for all musicians, of course, but those who kind of get after it, I've seen some incredible transformations in people's career. And you also find that there are a lot of spinning plates. It looks like career hopping or vertical hopping or something sometimes. But what is for you, especially building Rocket Network and being involved in technology, music, entrepreneurship all this time? What is the guiding principle, if there is one, or what is the thread that goes between these different things?
There is one, and I bet it's exactly the same in your life.
Yeah.
And that is purpose.
Yeah.
As a man, you are only really, I'm making a huge but really accurate generalization that you will not be happy unless you are following your purpose, really happy.
Mhm.
And your purpose can change as you go through life. As you said earlier, yeah, I was in a band. Blessedly, we were signed to a major label. Did very well in the '90s. That was great. That was my purpose, to communicate with lots of people and to hear my music on the radio. That was my purpose. And then I got interested in technology, and my purpose changed. But the same core driver, you just put your finger on it, is that, yeah, now I'm doing this thing and I'm going to do this as great as I can. I'm never going to give up, man. Yeah, you're like a pit bull, you just don't let go.
Yeah.
And the whole ethos of being an entrepreneur is not giving up, and then eventually learning your lesson and going, okay, this one didn't work. I'll do another one in terms of projects that we're starting on. What about you in your life? Do you define what you do as purpose driven? And
Absolutely. And as soon as it's not, I can't help but go in a different direction. So I'm zigzagging all over the place, or at least from the outside looking in, it appears that.
but there's not. There's a story and an arc in your life, right? As you look back on it and you think about, yeah, that sounded at the time that was a really random thing to be doing, but actually now I look back on it, benefit of hindsight, you go, oh, yeah, that was a really good idea. Here's for instance, I got really involved and interested in digital audio in the mid '90s, just towards the tail of the London Beat era, which was I quit the band in '95, and digital audio was just really starting.
Yeah.
eMagic created Logic Audio, which Apple then bought, which is now Logic Pro, one of the bigger DAWs that musicians use. And it was a digital version of a MIDI app, and it used to break, but it was really interesting. And I got, technically, my brother is a developer, an early internet TCP/IP developer, and he got me interested in FTP and other sort of low-level protocols.
Mhm.
And I was like, if people's bandwidth increases and the computers get faster as they are doing, you're going to be able to transmit files securely over this new thing, this newfangled thing called the internet. And so my sort of side interest in being online, I've been online since the middle 80s. It was the well.com, CompuServe, AOL, all of those things back in the 80s. And that's what got me. So at the time, you'd been like, you're a musician, you're in a well-known band. What are you messing around with all of this nonsense in the computers for? Well, guess what? Yeah. Then we developed Rocket Network, which became one of the leading ways to work securely on a track-based collaboration system. We sold that company to Avid in 2003.
Wow.
So yeah, a zigzag that zigged back.
Yeah. It's also been really interesting hearing you speak about your experience in bands in London Beat. And you're not saying, yes, I came out with this incredible hit that I wrote and I played all the instruments and it's all me. Look at how great I am. It's like, no, I was a part of something that was really meaningful and helped put these guys together. And maybe you can talk about that, how it's a kind of alchemical process almost, right? That was much larger than yourself. That came.
Not only that, London Beat was 5 people effectively. There was me, I played the instruments and was the kind of the driving force of the music. The 3 vocalists, the lead vocalist, Jimmy Helms, and 2 other backing vocalists. And then there was our manager, Sandra Turnbull. Sandra was effectively a 5th member of the band in so many ways. And due to the band splits, she was effectively the 5th member of the band. And she at the time managed the Eurythmics with her then husband. Yeah. So she was connected. I mean, I when I got the early ideas of the band, I was like, who do I need to? I really like the Eurythmics and Dave, and I know Dave, and that's what kind of introduced me to her. And so the alchemy of the success was the 4 of us doing the musical side of it and writing the songs. It's all about a song. It's all about the material, right? Getting stuff on radio. I've been a music producer before that, so I'd learned a lot about how to engineer sound so they sound good on FM radio, but Sandra had a huge amount to do with the success of the project. For instance, I was living in New York, moved back to the UK to form the band, working as an engineer. We did some demos, got some terrific deals underway, signed to RCA Records globally, but didn't sign to RCA Records for the USA. Why? Sandra Turnbull had been with RCA Records with the Eurythmics for the USA. At the time, RCA Records was a useless label in the USA. It was not a strong label at all. And so Sandra said, the US is about half of the global market, but we're not going to sign to anyone. So we were like, without a US deal for our first album, Sandra goes, trust me. We're like, but that means that you're on half the advances, half the publishing, but everything is like, and even less than that, because if you know, so we kept it free like this. And Sandra was like, trust me. I'm like, okay, you got it. We released the second album, which had I've Been Thinking About You on it. Yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. That song hit #1 in 12, 15 countries really fast without a US release.
Oh my gosh.
Now, all of a sudden, we were getting phone calls from the heads of all the US labels. And Al Teller was the head of NCA Records. This was all driven by Sandra. Called us up and he said, fellas, I want to meet you. I think you got a #1 record right here in the US. And he said, here's the first class ticket. So he flew us to New York from wherever we were. We're on tour promoting somewhere. And we went into his office. And I'll tell you a funny story. He had a toupee, and we'd been told, do not look at his hairline, because every time he moved his head, his toupee would move. Of course, the one thing you're doing is like trying not to look at his hairline. I was like that. Anyway, we sat and we played him the song, and he goes, I'm going to make your dreams come true, fellas. And they wrote us a really nice check. And then in due course, indeed, yes, it hit #1 in the US, and a lot of other fantastic dreams came true. However, that story was entirely managed and created by Sandra Turnbull.
Hmm.
I mean, huge respect to her for like seeing that. It was amazing. Also, it was really great being managed by a woman, right? Because she is tough. I mean, she'd been managing Annie Lennox, right? So she was used to like doing deals.
Right.
But without her, the alchemy of the band would never have happened. And I'm still really close to her today. We're still really great friends.
That is so amazing. And what is it about some tracks that hit while others don't?
I really wish I could tell you. I did I won an award, as I was saying earlier on. One of the awards that I got at the time was BMI PRS Writer of the Year in the 90s, 92 maybe. And they sat me next to Paul McCartney at the table. I'd kind of met him briefly, but not sitting next to him at dinner, and he's McCartney. And I said to him, listen, Paul, he said to me, first of all, he goes, I like your song, lad. I was like, I like all of your songs too, mate. He was great. And I said, Paul, how'd you write a song? He goes, I don't effing know. I just look up there and wait for it to happen. You don't know. I said, I got one more question for you. Can you read music? Because when I was a kid, piano lessons, they're always trying to make me read music, and I found it very difficult to do. I can't really sight read. And he says, no, lad, the notes get in the way, the dots get in the way of the notes. The dots get in the way of the notes. I was like, oh, if I'd have known that when I was 6 years old, struggling to play the piano off the sight reading, I would have been like, well, Paul McCartney can't read music.
Yeah. Well, it's a fundamentally different skill, isn't it?
Yeah. Songwriting is absolutely, for me, to cycle back to your question, there's the zeitgeist, which is the collective consciousness that we humans live in. Like right now, at this moment, you and I are alive at the same time, and everyone else on the planet is alive at the moment. There's sort of a zeitgeist of a wave of consciousness, like we're all experiencing time now together. And if you're a writer, you're able to plug into that, plug into the kind of the feel of the generation. You're able to kind of actively somehow subconsciously integrate that into what you're doing, then it'll happen. And that is, you've just got to be in the right time at the right place. You got to be aware of being in the right time at the right place to have the right management. This is a music business back in the 90s. It's still the same today. You got to have the right influencers on board. You got to have the right mix. You got to have the right melody. You got to have something. So there's a lot of pieces to find out, but ultimately it's about the zeitgeist. It's about plugging into that intangible. And trust me, I have tried to recreate. I've been thinking about you many times. Never managed to do it.
Yeah.
The other hits that we had in London Beat, Better Love, etc., were quite different feels and to the big hit,
Yeah. Do you still incorporate writing into your daily or weekly or sometimes practice? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. When I am trying to solve a business strategic or a business logical problem, I do one of two things. I either go and sit with my dogs, and they just kind of, dogs are all about right now. They don't care about anything. They're like, what about now? Right. Or I go and sit at the piano or pick up a guitar. Mm-hmm. And that somehow disengages your brain and allows the problems to happen in the background. Now, you're a musician.
Yeah.
What about you? Does it work like that for you or not?
Yeah, very similarly. As long as I'm not focusing on the words, right? So if I'm just kind of cruising along and letting my fingers do the playing on the piano or guitar, then my mind is free. Yeah. And I often do that in between, like if I have a stacked day like today, in between interviews, I found that if I can, instead of going out and scrolling on Twitter or doing whatever else I probably would just naturally do if I let myself do it, I'll intentionally say, no, I'm going to go sit over there. I see my guitar in the corner, and then I just sit down at the couch and kind of just come back to baseline, let my mind wander a little bit. And I think that's really the magical place where stuff comes in and hot, those ideas just come straight into your ear, or whatever Paul was talking about. You're channeling something larger than yourself, hopefully, but that can also manifest as a cool business idea. It doesn't have to be a banging song.
Right. I did the music a few years ago, some of the music for a TV show called Genius about Albert Einstein. I think it was on Discovery. And I discovered that Einstein used to play the violin, and he used to play very specific Mozart, in particular, pieces on his violin when he needed to think. And so he would go and pick up his violin, and he was quite a competent player, and he would play these pieces. And I found out what some of them were, and I did some electronic versions of those pieces that were used as part of the promotion for the TV show. And it was really interesting, kind of dialing into what aspects of that sort of Baroque music, early Mozart, later Bach, was able to kind of throw you into a space where you disengaged your conscious brain. You're still kind of, it's like looking at something through soft eyes, right? You got the problem, you're going to put it back there, but now you're going to listen to this thing. The album's not, that particular album's on Spotify. If you just look at Focus at Will, maybe it's called Genius, I forget. Anyway, Focus at Will on Spotify, you can find it. And it's so what we're doing here is time on it. It's been happening a long time. It's good enough for Einstein. It's certainly good enough for you and me, brother.
Well, let's talk about music in the brain and Focus at Will, because I think a lot of people agree that music is in their life, but they don't necessarily know why, or maybe more importantly, how they can use it or adapt it a little bit to help them produce better outcomes, whether that's focus, sleep. You can really modulate your own physiology through sound in incredible ways. You don't even have to be a player or a musician to do so. So maybe you can just riff on that a little bit, like how you got into functional music as well as where it's all going.
Right. Well, you just put your finger on it. Functional music is different than music for entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So functional music traditionally would be music for a funeral, or music for a wedding ceremony, or music for at a place of worship. These are functional pieces of music. They're not for entertainment. It's a part of who we are as humans. Have you ever been to a wedding, talking about weddings, where the DJ has completely misread the crowd? It happens on a fairly regular basis.
All the time, yeah. Par for the course. But
Well, here's another one from Abel, and
everyone's like, "This is the worst DJ ever."
The best one I ever saw was a wedding where the DJ played "How Deep Is Your Love" for the father-daughter dance. I was like, oh, someone's not really listened to the lyrics.
No, sometimes you got to listen.
But being serious about it, if you are at an event like that and the DJ plays the wrong song in the set, it completely blows the vibe of the evening.
Yeah.
We've seen it happen again. Now we're going to play a little bit of AC/DC. Like, no, don't do that. So the power of the playlist is a thing. And in 2010, I got really interested in how some people listen to some types of music to help them work or study. And I'd assumed that it's easy. It's just like one type of music and listen to it, and it works, right? I had a friend who was a physician, and he listened to Chariots of Fire, that song from the do 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 do. Remember that, by Vangelis? That he just listened to that track on repeat while he was studying, just that, over and over and over and over and over. It was his study music. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So maybe that's got something to do with it. Mm-hmm. And I meet other people who then would listen to talk radio in one ear, a game of some kind, football on the other ear. They've got, some kind of chat app going here and da-da-da, and then they're studying in the center. I'm like, that's a lot of stuff going on for that. And then other people who always have to have novelty, new types of tunes all the time. And so it became clear to me that we're all kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me on a path to Focus at Will, which is an app. People are listening. You can find it on the store for Android and an iPhone, and also on the web. And we discovered that, raised a bit of money for the company. We discovered that different people have very different responses to different types of music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to do with your brain type, and it's to do with ADHD, believe it or not. So what is Focus at Will? It's a music streaming service that has unique music you can't find anywhere else, that is designed specifically for people who are easily distracted, which is about 15% of the population. I guarantee it's you and me, both. It's guys, it's humans like us, all the fun people.
Right.
We're just people who need to have a lot of stimulation to be able to focus on one thing.
Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire as far as that goes, like with ADHD, right? Can you talk about that? Because it's not immediately obvious what's going on.
Yeah. So I started the company in 2009, got investors from Singularity University and a few other places, and did a lot of actual repeatable science. This is all scientific method. This is all double blind to figure this out. It turns out that the more ADD you are, the more easily distracted you are. Actually, your brain is underclocking. So this is the way it was explained to me by my science team in Focus. Well, they said you've got two parts of your brain. They've got your consciousness here, like the front of your brain, and then you've got a clock at the back, which is saying, "Talk to Abel, talk to Abel, talk to Abel." So I can concentrate, because this is like, like in a rowing team, you've got the cocks at the back going, pull, pull, right? So this part of your brain, which allows you to keep on focusing, is just like a clock that says, talk to Abel, talk to Abel. Now, if that clock is running slowly, what happens? It goes, talk to Abel. And now I'm like, that's a nice looking squirrel. I think I left talk to Abel. Oh, sorry, bro. What were you saying?
Right.
And now it goes, talk to Abel. And now I'm like, oh man, I got to get some stuff for tonight, and I got to put some gas in the car. It goes, talk to Abel. I'm saying, oh, sorry, bro. I was gone. So weirdly, your brain is underclocking. Now, when you take stimulants, obviously we all know about the amphetamines that kids take. Anybody with ADHD can get it. What it does is it speeds this clock up. So it goes, talk to Abel, talk to Abel, talk to Abel. I'm like, I gotcha. It's going, talk to Abel. Da, 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 da. We found that same response can be clocked by music of a specific type and in a specific energy. And so it is effectively going, focus, focus, focus. The key is it's different for everybody. And the Focus at Will system has a quiz when you log on to it that based on a number of questions like, how much coffee do you drink? How old are you? Are you a man or a woman? It's different. Men and women are different in terms of the way they focus and the way their attention works. And so people with significant ADD need crazy sounds. Again, if you look on Focus at Will website, you can hear some of this. Sounds like the stuff that works well for many people. Sounds like a car door slamming furiously and repeatedly at 200 beats per minute.
Well, this is what I always wondered, going to one of those fancy schools as an undergrad, a lot of my people who I lived next to, the roommates or whatever, would have their own music. And I always liked to listen to kind of like soulful funk, New Orleans style, not just straight ahead beats, but I kind of had my own thing. And then a guy who became one of my best friends lived right next door, and his thing was death metal and like 200 beats a minute, the whole time. Like, this is his study music. This is his relaxing music. This is like, I'm falling to sleep to this music. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't even walk in the room a lot of the time. So you explaining how we're all just wired a little bit differently.
It was speeding his clock up, which enabled him to relax.
Yeah.
The other thing about the focus at will system, and this is true of any music you're trying to listen to while you're working, is we are hardwired to listen to the human voice. Humans. If you're right now, if you hear someone talking outside your door, your attention will be, is that fight or flight? Is that someone bringing me a sandwich, or is that someone coming in to hurt me with something, right? So we evolutionarily have developed a sort of a knack of listening for human voices. So if you hear music that's got a human voice in it, you're going to pay more attention to it with your fore mind, with your conscious mind. And so you really have got to find music that has no vocals in it. And if it's EDM that has no vocals or any sounds that sound like vocals, breaths and these kinds of things, you're going to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Also, we pay attention to dopamine hits. And so EDM has the drop that comes after a breakdown, right? We're all familiar with that. We're all standing on the dance floor. There's a breakdown. We got our hands up like this. We're waiting. The DJ goes, and the beat's dropped, right? When that happens, you get a dopamine hit. So if you're listening to EDM while you're studying, there's a dopamine hit. It's going to knock you out of the of your concentration, and it's going to cause you a slight attention deficit situation. So on the folks that will EDM channels, there's quite a lot of them. They don't have breakdowns or drops, most of them. They just power through, because then you're just like on the train. It's going, talk to Abel, talk to Abel. You got it, man. I got to turn this off because my head's, stop it.
Well, because music for entertainment kind of brings you through this experience of emotions, right? With kind of like this downplaying and going back up and climaxing and back. But if you're being functional about it, you don't want any of that. You just want to keep the train chugging ahead, right? Which allows you to focus for longer than you otherwise would. So then how do you know when you're out of gas or when you should take a break, when you're kind of enhancing the experience with music like this?
Yeah, we have a researcher that we work with a lot, who's an expert in brain models and psychology, Dr. Julia Mossbridge. And she said to me when I first met her, I said, I want to try and find the music which is most helpful and is keeping people focused, but yet is not sort of noticeable, that isn't, it's too, it's not grabbing you in the same way. She said, well, the first thing you got to do is the opposite. We want to find out which songs are the most distracting. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you can test it. Here's some standard tests. You stick people up, you give them headphones, you play them these 5 songs, and then you can watch what they're trying to do in the standards. You can measure how distracted someone is. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay. So we looked, did a search for the 5 most popular songs in the world, whatever they were. And we found the number 1 most distracting song that almost no one can concentrate to if you play it in the background is Snoop. Drop It Like It's Hot. Snoop! If that comes on, your brain just goes, where was I again?
Wow.
Second one was the Beatles, She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. That comes on, love them or hate them. If that comes on, your attention gone. It's amazing. The third thing was I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas.
Really?
I think, or Happy Birthday, one of those two, yeah. And then there's a couple of U2 tunes in there. I think Beautiful Day was one that was really distracting. It's a beautiful day. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really intriguing, especially with Snoop. I mean, it's an amazing record. It's one of the best records of all time, in my opinion. It is so well recorded.
Yeah.
And to watch the data, it would go Snoop. I'm like, that's where everybody lost their concentration in the tests. So that then meant we reverse engineered that into like, what is the
opposite of Snoop?
Right. To answer your question about how do you manage the time, there's an attention zone of about 25 minutes, and almost no one can concentrate through 25 minutes. And so the system has a built-in way of just kind of changing the energy, or better yet, is to actually work in. You've probably heard of the Pomodoro technique, which is 20-minute slots, right? So, best thing to do is to run in multiples of 20 minutes, or 25 minutes is a good one, because if you're really dialed in and you've got the music working and you're really in a flow state, 75 minutes is the absolute maximum you can do. You'll just be like, and you've used up your brain chemicals, internally. You just need to recharge. The last thing I will say about Focus at Will is that it doesn't work for everybody. One person in three can't listen to music or anything when they're working. Got to be a quiet library or noise canceling headphones, right? Another one person in three, yeah, music works some of the time. It's kind of cool. But one person in three, music works really well when they dial in the right music.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's another thing. If you're a musician, Abel, mentioning no names, what happens is you're always listening to the arrangement. You're always listening to the key. That snare's a bit loud. Yeah, I like that guitar part. What key is this in? Right. And it's very difficult to turn that off. So we found generally, if you're a musician and you're trying to listen to music while you're working, you'll find it difficult to find music that is not distracting because you're a musician.
Yeah. I definitely echo that. And actually, when I was an undergrad, we did a few studies looking into this, how distractible music can become for people, and also how different types of music have these different effects. And
I wonder whether your results matched ours.
they did. They did. Aside from, it was a level of degrees where instead of avoiding all vocals entirely, which worked the best for most people compared to the control. So no music, and then just purely instrumental music, and then the same exact music with vocals, or the same exact music with vocals in another language. If you understand the language, it's the worst. It's the most distractible.
You got it.
If you
Drop it like it's hot.
yeah. If you didn't understand the language, but you kind of heard that it was a music, or you heard that it was a human voice, it sounded like a human voice, that was better than understanding the lyrics. But there was like kind of this gradient involved. And I imagine that everyone also being different complicates this immensely, because that would translate, across, you would have to compare Westerners to Easterners and women to men, and all sorts of different things are going on. But I do know for a fact that there are certain people, and a lot of them come from my family or are also musicians, where it's like, if you hear a bad song come on and you're just, out at the bar, or you're just shopping or something like that, you cannot, like, I have to run out of there after a certain point. I've got a tolerance, and once I'm past that tolerance, I gotta get out of there. And most people are just like, I didn't even realize there was music on. But for me, it's absolutely intolerable. Is it like that for you, Will?
Yeah, I've learned to kind of ignore it
Yeah.
a little bit more than I used to. You hear, I'm like, oh man, can you just turn? Oh, whoa. My local supermarket has here in LA, it has two playlists, one of which is fantastic, all your favorite songs from the 80s, and one which is dreadful, all your worst songs from the 80s.
That's
Just
amazing.
saying.
You said that you have a like an assessment that people can go through to see
Yeah,
which type they are,
there's
correct?
a quiz. There's a quiz at the front end of the system. When you there's a free trial and there's a quiz. It's got about a 60% accuracy of predicting which kind of music will work best for you. And you asked me about, do I still write? The answer is yes. I have a channel of my own on the system, the Focus at Will system, called Nature Beat, and it's kind of three different flavors. The system has three different energy levels for any of the channels. There's sort of a slower, medium, and a faster level. Nature Beat's the most successful, most popular channel on the system, actually. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing recently. Not London Beat, but Nature Beat. It's got the sounds of nature on it, as well as a bunch of music stuff.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because that's another thing. Some people really do well with sounds of nature, but most people do. But some people also do even better, especially the ones who came from New York, with sounds of a city out behind them, with the sirens and the honking horns and the noises. It's fascinating how we're all wired differently in that sense.
Well, we are, if you look at the brain in terms of brain function and you look in an MRI, there's been a few tests, there's been a few research projects about this, not ours, but well-known ones. And you look at which areas of the brain are impacted by our senses, right? So your skin, of course, you can feel that. Your eyes, so your visuals, a percentage of your brain lights up when you see stuff. But what is intriguing is that your hearing is the parts of your brain that are affected by your hearing is greater than any other sense. And so we actually live in an audio-based world. For instance, you can close your eyes and you can't see anything, but you don't have ear lids, right?
Yeah.
And people, you go around to someone's house with a kid and you're like, shh, don't wake the baby, right? Well, the kid's always listening. So from the minute you're born till the minute you're not here, you're hearing stuff, whether you're awake or asleep. And so we are all, we're very, very sensitive to the sound of footsteps, to the sound of twigs breaking, and the sound of someone breathing behind your neck. You're like, oh dear.
So everything that you've learned about functional music combined with your career in music, where does that leave you in terms of your own daily practice and how you might use music, whether it's in the background? And you talked about, just kind of brainstorming while you're playing. But how else has it showed up in your life, or how else have you changed your approach based upon what you've learned?
I got much more interested in the intangible as the years have gone on, which is, why do certain vocalists, I'm a big, big fan of vocal music, why do some vocalists have the ability to hypnotize an audience? And they, Aretha Franklin, if you were ever lucky enough to see her live, it was like being in the presence, like you 2 hours have gone by and you have no idea what happened. Annie Lennox, with London Beat, did a few shows with the Eurythmics back in the day, and Annie used to do the same thing. She would stand on stage. At the time, she was the most successful artist in the world, female diva for a few years in the 80s, and the entire 25,000 people would just be like transfixed. Why? How does that happen? Yeah. And it starts getting into the esoteric as to, well, they're great singers and they can do, but I think it's more than that. I think when someone like that sings, what they're doing is they're connecting people who are listening to universal energy, to source, to God, if you like. We've all been in that experience where someone has, particularly vocalists, but it's true of guitarists as well. Eric Clapton does this on guitar. Even if you don't like Clapton, if you're in the audience and he's playing, you're going to get the hit, because it's just like connects you to the greater connection of us all. And so I've been very supportive of singers that I've met who can do that. And it needn't be someone at a world-class level. This could be someone in your local church, or it could be someone that who's a friend, and somehow they open the mouth, they sing a few words, and all of a sudden you're just transported. It's magical. And that's a critical part, especially in these troubled times, of being able to connect with everybody through what is almost it's almost an active experience, listening, being in the presence of someone singing like that. Yeah. So there's a new generation of fantastic musicians coming through, kids today who are like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I think there's going to be a counter revolution or a renaissance of live players, because the AI music and gen art of all kinds, which is generative art, visuals, music, and I think that we humans will inevitably have an interest in, it probably won't be everybody. It's not like a new big movement that the whole world looks at, but I think there's going to be a significant movement of younger players coming through who are amazing talents. There's a group called Tone 6. They're a group of young New Zealanders. Tone 6, if you look them up, you'll find them. Amazing vocalists. They're like 17, 16.
I love that. Do you worry about arts being taken out of the schools at the same time that AI is gobbling up a lot of the jobs? And like humans obviously need to have a future that involves art and music and playing, that sort of thing, in one way or another. But it's hard to envision what that looks like, especially for the generations coming up.
It's hard to envision what it looks like. You said it yourself. Again, I never say never because it's impossible to know, but I cannot see how an AI voice, however well and effective and how much of an illusion the AI voice is, can stand on a stage and transfix 25,000 people by connecting through that singer to the greater consciousness of human beings. And I've not yet, it's still early in the gen music world and the gen, but I've not yet heard anything. It always sounds incredibly impressive. And then you hear it again and you're like, yeah. Have you ever eaten food that's got too much MSG in it?
Right.
It kind of overclocks your brain a bit.
Yeah.
And an hour later you're hungry again. It's just weird.
It's empty.
So I think there's something around that, as I was saying, this new generation, people are moved by humans singing in particular.
Yeah.
Right. Always. And so there's a when someone is standing there, it's a physical thing. There's a human body, there's a mouth, there's a consciousness, it's a thing. Whereas a recorded AI generated track or a recorded AI generated movie, it's very impressive. But over time, I suspect, you know what it's good for? Ads.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Because we don't care. Who cares about an ad? The answer is none of us.
Yeah.
We don't. It's just a freaking pain in the butt that we got to live through to watch the next show after commercial breaks. So, yeah, ads are already being made increasingly well by AI, by AI performers and AI music. And yeah, I think that's a really perfect use for it.
Yeah, they can have it. And there is going to be a lot of, there will be examples of perfect use cases for it. And I think that is one. But when it comes to AI generated music, songs, that whole thing, the replacement of actual humans, I have a hard time believing that we'll care for too long. We'll put up with it because it's fine in certain places. It'll always be fine. But the thing that really changes human behavior on the other end is that shared experience. Like you said, it's not even listening to a song from afar that can kind of do it, or watching a video of someone playing or a concert. It's like, oh, that's cool. That's fun. Good music or whatever. But when you're there, like you said, with someone like Aretha Franklin or someone who just has this incredible mastery of their craft and also the generosity of spirit to be there with you in the same room at the same time. I think that's where the power is, right? Not just the people who are singing either on stage, but also the generosity of spirit of the people who are in the crowd, dancing around, shouting, cheering, all sharing the same thing. I think that we'll pretty soon see the power in this again, because it has kind of fallen by the wayside, especially during the pandemic, and we're still trying to figure out what this looks like after that. But I hope for the generations coming up that they can feel the joy there and the connection, because man, there's something so powerful about seeing, especially like you said, people singing on stage. Actually, playing instruments is great. Whatever, DJ's cool too, and the dance beat stuff, there's certainly a place for it. But when you have humans sharing their voice with you, that is really, really powerful.
Especially those amazing vocalists, like the Eagles back in the day. There's a documentary about the Eagles. I think it's called The Eagles. It's a 2-part documentary. It is, even if you're listening to this and you don't even like or even know of the Eagles, just watch it in terms of what humans are competent at doing. Yeah. There's a couple of places in that documentary where the 5 of them stand around in the dressing room and start singing, and you're like, oh, That's why the Eagles were so good.
Yeah.
That's what they do. There's just stick a mic up and record that.
Yes.
There's no trickery at all. That's amazing songs, and that kind of level of technique and harmonizing and oneness of delivery, and quite amazing.
It's so inspiring, and it's rare. I hope it's not always so rare, though. Will, maybe we've just got a couple minutes left. You can talk about community some more, because that's another piece of all of this, especially related to metal and having groups of people aligned toward a higher purpose. I think that also will help get us through the next few years when we go through this unprecedented change and a lot of people's jobs getting gobbled up, or people around them that are experiencing the same thing. And that loss of meaning or purpose is something that we're all going to have to reckon with as humans in the years ahead. So I think joining up with other like-minded folks is probably the best thing we can do earlier than later.
Yeah, someone asked me in an interview the other day, and they said, when you look back on your different careers that I've had as a musician, as a tech inventor, and folks at Will, I've always been interested in communication. That's the single thing, because as a musician, you're communicating with audience, and folks that Will Rocket Network, which is another thing I did, which was the track-based collaboration system, was collaboration and communication. Communication is a key part, and community is a piece of that. And so in recent years, I've joined forces with Ken Rakalski, who is the founder of the Metal Men Group. Metal is an acronym: Media, Entertainment, Technology, Artists, and Leadership. And you and I met through this group. Just in full disclosure. We are a group of guys from very different backgrounds from all over the world who are accomplished at something or some things. And I wish the age range is from sort of early 30s up to 80s. Most guys are in their sort of early 40s, 50s, late 50s, 60s maybe. And I wish I'd had access to a group of highly competent, accomplished men like this to give me brotherhood and guidance when I was in my 20s. I would have definitely made a few different decisions. Yeah. Saved a bit of time. And metal, we're a men's group, and men are better men generally. We are better men when we're in the company of other really competent, kind, heart-centered men, when we're in the cave with other men. And we're better men in the rest of the world. We're better husbands to our wives. We're better partners. We're better business guys. And, a rising tide floats all boats. And metal is... I've been in it 16 years, so I was a member for many years before I became Ken's partner. And we help you with your problems. We help you help yourself with your problems. That's kind of we don't fix your problems, but we'll help you figure out answers to your problems, and we'll help you build your dreams. I mean, you're a metal guy yourself. Does that kind of make sense to you?
I love that description. Yeah, it's a shared reality when you have a group of people who are all kind of aligned, and also, as you say, have done at least something of various things, of various degrees of success too. I think is important to kind of
absolutely
run that.
Yeah, it's for me. I had found that I had got a lot of male friends from the tech business. I was living in San Francisco. I was in Silicon Valley for quite a few years. And I knew a lot of contacts from the music business, and they're kind of an interesting, very different group. But I didn't have really close friends, men friends who were physicians, who were lawyers, who were astronauts, who were inventors of other things. I didn't have this kind of richness, and I didn't know guys who lived in Thailand, Lithuania, Germany. I didn't have guys I got to know through through a community like that. And the value of having long-term friendships with men who care about you, but who do not have any direct impact on your career. So there's no angle here whatsoever with most of these guys. They're just friends. One of my closest friends is Dr. Robert Heller. I met him through the metal group. He's 89, still practicing as a physician today at 89. Amazing. And, I'll be talking to him about some, harebrained scheme I'm thinking of. And he goes, "Do you really want to do that?" I'm like, "Thank you. Thank you. You just saved me 6 months of..."
That's so great.
You sure about that?
Sometimes that's all it takes, doesn't it? Just like a poignant question from someone who knows better is, yeah.
Yeah. So Metal Man is a virtual and in-person hybrid group. We've got many hundreds of guys. This is a free, any guys listening to this, just go to metal.men. Yes, we're a men's group, metal.men. And get a guest pass for free for 3 weeks. Come and kick our tires and meet us. There's a very interesting group. As you mentioned when we started, we are all largely unemployable in a traditional sense. There's a lot of entrepreneurial thinking in the group.
Well, there can be power in numbers in that sense, right? When you see someone else take an outrageous risk and then watch them a few months later and see that, whoa, that actually worked, that's something that can change your trajectory too.
Right. We've got guys in the community. You'll get Nolan Bushnell, one of my favorite members. He's in his early 80s. He's a regular member in all the metal meetings. He literally invented the video game. That's literally what he did. He was the founder of Atari. And then later on, he was like, how can we sell more video games? We need to get kids playing video games. Chuck E. Cheese. And then he created Chuck E. Cheese, which was a genius level marketing plan at the time to get kids playing console games. And, Chuck E. Cheese still alive, still around today. And just being around Nolan and finding out how he thinks about things. How does he think about starting a business? How does he see? Because the conversation about being unemployable, by the way, started originally with a conversation with Nolan a few years ago.
Oh, no way.
I said, would you ever consider getting a job, Nolan? He goes, oh, no. He said, I'm unemployable. It's like, oh, thank you. No, I'm going to steal that because I'm kind of the same way. If the shit goes sideways, guess what? I'm never going to go and try and get a job anywhere. But what I will do is I'll try and look for another opportunity. I'll see if there's a market niche available. There's a widget that could fit in here. There's a service that's not being properly,
Yeah. That's how you've got to think about it. Will, thank you so much for being here. What is the best place for people to find your work as well as metal?
Well, thank you so much. There's a bit of a list here. London Beat was my band. I was the first guitarist and founder of the band from 87 to 94. So the hits, you'll see me on those if you look on YouTube. The Rocket Network delivery stuff is now part of the Avid Pro Tools cloud collaboration system. So that's, if you use Pro Tools, you'll have seen that. The Focus at Will music service for helping you focus and concentrate is Focus at Will. Yep, I'm the Will, Focus at Will. And you can find me. The best way to reach me these days is through the metal.men website. I am Will at metal.men, which is a killer email address.
That's pretty good.
Nearly as good as Ken's, which is Ken at metal.men.
Oh.
Go figure.
He's got the rhyme. Yeah.
He's got the rhyme. Yeah.
Will, thank you so much for being here today. We really enjoyed this conversation.
Back at you. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Abel. And I'm a big fan of your podcast. Well done. The secret of podcasting is to be consistent and to keep doing it.
Hey, Abel here one more time. And if you believe in our mission to create a world where health is the norm, not sickness, here are a few things you can do to help keep this show coming your way. Click like, subscribe, and leave a quick review wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. You can also subscribe to my new Substack channel for an ad-free version of this show in video and audio. That's at abeljames.substack.com. You can also find me on Twitter or X, YouTube, as well as Fountain FM, where you can leave a little crypto in the tip jar. And if you can think of someone you care about who might learn from or enjoy this show, please take a quick moment to share it with them. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.